Good morning, I'm Jon Delano, and welcome to the Sunday Business Page. This morning, the aftermath from last week's tragic flash flood and the resulting 4 deaths along Washington Boulevard. We'll talk with local attorney Richard Rosenthal about liability and potential legal claims for the families of those who died and those whose cars were either damaged or destroyed in that incident. Then we'll tell you about a new joint venture by Counsel Energy and Noble Energy to develop hundreds of thousands of acres of Counsel-owned Marcellus shale property in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Counsel's Vice President Tommy Johnson will join us to discuss the economic implications and the potential for job creation from this cooperative effort. And Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield has awarded the Sisters of Mercy's Operation Safety Net $70,000 to help the homeless in our area cope with the coming winter. We'll find out how that money will support Operation Safety Net's severe weather emergency shelter. It's all next right here on the Sunday Business Page.
The Sunday Business Page on KDKA TV is brought to you by Stewart Capital Advisors. Experience the power of the Piper.
Good morning, and thanks for spending part of your Sunday morning with us. This week, funeral services were held for 4 people who were the victims of a tragic flash flood that struck Washington Boulevard in the East End. Kimberly Griffith and 2 of her daughters, Brenna and Michaela, were trapped in their van and drowned before rescuers could reach them. Mary Saflin from Oakmont died when she was swept away by the powerful force of 9 to 10 feet of water. Her body was recovered the next day along the shore of the Allegheny River. As the families cope with an unbelievable tragedy, the community and its leaders are left to determine how and why this happened and who might be responsible. With 4 loved ones lost in the flash flooding on Washington Boulevard and nobody stepping up responsibility, it's easy to imagine a lawsuit.
The state takes the position they're responsible for the road surface only. And the city takes the position that they and the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority have a disagreement as to who maintains what. It's not hard to understand why something like this could occur.
Attorney Rick Rosenthal, managing partner of Edgar Snyder Associates, appears in TV ads focused on suing municipal and state governments and says lawsuits are not easy because of something called sovereign immunity.
The sovereign is the state. And the Old English law was the sovereign could do no wrong, and therefore only where the sovereign said they could be sued are the areas where you're allowed to bring a claim.
In Pennsylvania, victims have a limited right to sue the government.
There's a separate statute that makes the owner of the storm sewer system responsible if they have reason to know that there's a problem and they had adequate time in which to cure the problem, then they can be found liable.
But there's a big catch. The state limits the amount recoverable from the city and its authorities to just $500,000, and that's for everyone combined.
The consumers or the individuals aren't the people who the government's concerned with.
But lawsuit or not,
people shouldn't have to die for the roads and the storm sewer systems to be fixed.
Now, this tragedy could see a number of lawsuits from the families of those who died to those drivers whose cars and vans were damaged or destroyed in the flash flood. We're joined now in the studio by Richard Rosenthal, managing partner of Edgar Snyder Associates, with more on this critical and complicated liability question. Rick, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Good morning.
This is a tough legal battle because essentially the state says you're not allowed to sue me except under limited circumstances. Is that it in a nutshell?
Both the state and the local governments have 2 separate acts that limit the areas where they can be sued, and if you can successfully make a claim against them for your family's losses or the individual's losses, then the amount of losses are limited by the statute to, in the state's position, $250,000 per plaintiff or per the life of a plaintiff. In the situation involving local municipality, it's $500,000 in the aggregate. Meaning if there were 4 people who had claims, the most you could collect against a local government is $500,000. The state act allows $250 times 4 of up to $1 million.
Why does the state limit the recovery for both local governments, authorities, and for themselves? I mean, you put yourself in the position of the family members who lost loved ones in a tragic and very difficult emotional situation. $500,000 split among everybody is peanuts.
I think really what we're dealing with is a public policy issue. The state maintains over 20,000 miles of roads. Right. Many of the roads were given to the state in the 1930s under what was called the Pinchot period, or Governor Pinchot. Right. And the state will take the perspective that, our state officials, we don't have the ability to do the kind of maintenance and the kind of upkeep that's necessary to really make our roadway system be reasonably safe for the traveling public. The local municipalities will say they have limitations on their ability to do certain things because the roadway itself was a state road. And while they controlled the stormwater source system, they will also talk about having certain limitations. Neither government may argue in court that in fact economic limitations was the reason why the work wasn't done. And that's the reason, I think, for the statutory cap.
Has anything happened over the last week since this tragedy that leads you to conclude that there might be success against one party or the other?
Well, it's very clear that, according to the Post-Gazette, Michael Baker Engineering was hired sometime way before the July 4th first flood that we've had, because we had a July 4th flood, a July 18th flood, and then we had the one last Friday. But there evidently was a $150,000 contract with Michael Baker to review safety aspects of Washington Boulevard. And therefore the question is, was time of the essence in the review? Why was this contract led in the first purpose, meaning why did it happen?
Yeah, well, obviously they thought there was a problem.
And what, if anything, was done prior to Friday?
Yeah, and apparently nothing.
Well, what's really clear now is I think Mayor Rosenthal has come out and said it may cost the city money, but we want to have police officers able to close the road down when we believe, in fact, it could be a danger to the traveling public. Right. The sadness is watching the news from last night and the 4 individuals who unfortunately will no longer be with their families, and that usually is what gets things motivated. People have to experience losses in order for the governments to really have the proactive nature that they need to have to protect the public.
And that, of course, is where the lawsuits come in and where lawyers come in, frankly, because you can keep the attention of officials through those lawsuits.
It's interesting, but what has gone on over time is lawyers such as myself make claims. We sue because of conditions of certain types of roadways. We watch the roadways be improved and made safe as a result of the claims we've brought. To a certain extent, the families who we represent, as well as we personally, feel a sense of gratification that, in fact, we've done something to make the area safer, not just gotten the economic compensation that the families were entitled to, but things change for the better from a safety perspective.
Well, we certainly hope that that's the outcome of this. Rick Rosenthal, thank you, sir, very much for coming in. We appreciate your expertise.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
to have you here.